First-century Rome was a claustrophobic, grimy megacity, choking on its own density, entirely devoid of pristine white marble. The city reached a population of 1 million inhabitants, a concentration of humanity that would not be matched again until the Industrial Revolution. This density created a biological vulnerability. As the heat map shows, Rome was a massive caloric sink, consuming vast energy with zero agricultural output internally. Local geography couldn't close the gap. Even at maximum output, surrounding farmland fell dangerously short. To prevent mass starvation, the city required a minimum of 150,000 to 270,000 tons of imported grain annually. Rome became a hostage to its own scale, necessitating an artificial logistical supply chain that reshaped the entire Mediterranean economy. This model illustrates the physical reality of the population. These tightly packed blocks contained thousands of mouths to feed, creating a massive demand for calories. Meeting this demand meant bypassing local farms to source grain from distant, high-yield provinces. Egypt and North Africa became the empire's caloric engines. This fertile vegetation strip along the Nile provided the raw energy to keep the capital alive. The state secured this supply by extracting taxes in physical grain rather than coin, ensuring the food moved directly from the soil to the grain ships. The empire treated these distant provinces as external nanological organs, pumping raw calories across the sea to sustain the heart of the capital. Inside Rome's slums lived a landless, debt-ridden, and highly volatile plebeian class. The Cura Annonae, or the grain dole, functioned as a calculated risk management apparatus. This was a matter of survival math. This chart weighs the massive financial burden of the grain supply against the total destruction of an urban riot led by 300,000 men. At its peak, 320,000 adult male citizens received a standardized monthly issue of 33 kilograms of durum wheat. Rome operated the largest free distribution of food in history because buying urban compliance was more cost-effective than fighting a civil war in the streets. Distributing this volume of grain required a massive physical infrastructure. Standardized weights and heavy scales processed thousands of sacks at state centers daily. Beneficiaries were tracked through a rigorous scribal ledger system and strict qualification lists. To speed up delivery, the state eventually mechanized the process. This carving shows the type of grain mill used as the system shifted from raw grain to water-milled flour. Later emperors expanded the distribution to include olive oil and pork, further integrating the state into the daily survival of the citizens. Massive state-owned warehouses, or horia, served as critical buffers, holding the reserves needed to weather supply delays. These distribution centers acted as security outposts, mechanically converting imported calories into political stability. At the mouth of the Tiber, the ruins of Ostia Antica reveal the scale of this lifeline. The extensive foundation grids supported massive brick warehouses. Moving the grain required a specialized fleet. This relief shows the rigging of a merchant freighter, ships capable of hauling 1,200 tons of grain in a single voyage. A vast maritime network connected Rome to its caloric engines. Shipping lanes from Egypt and Carthage funneled directly toward the Italian coast. Transit times were lopsided. A freighter reached Alexandria in 14 days, but the return against Mediterranean headwinds took 70 days. The cargo was constantly at risk. If grain gets wet, it germinates and expands, with enough force to split a ship's hull from the inside. The empire's stability was outsourced to private merchant fleets, depending entirely on the weather's reliability. The system was terrifyingly fragile. A single late-season storm could delay a fleet long enough to empty the warehouses in Ostia. When the wind failed, the warehouses emptied, and the threat of riot immediately destabilized the capital. The breaking point came in 439 CE, when Vandals seized the grain-producing provinces of North Africa. With the North African supply line severed, Rome's caloric heat map falls into the red. The primary lifeline of the city was gone. Without the imported surplus, the city's population collapsed to match the limited food available from the local landscape. Rome's fall was the final failure of an artificial thermodynamic supply chain that had reached the limits of its ability to defy nature.